everybody, it's Bunny, and today I am doing a vlog that I've wanted to post for a long time, and it is a paranormal vlog, and I'm finally getting to discussing my favorite and best paranormal investigation ever. Hands down, this is my favorite experience with the paranormal. Before I start, I want to direct your attention to some channels that I totally support and endorse for the paranormal. I mentioned one of them in my last paranormal vlog about the Ouija board, and her name is Court Leaks. So click on her name right here to subscribe. She does awesome paranormal stories. The next one is Beauty Creep, right there, and she uploaded a new paranormal experience video today, and it's literally out of this world. Like, it was like the first thing I watched when I woke up this morning, and I'm still thinking about the Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend thing. So if you haven't seen her channel yet, go there. And then the third one, ERTPRC, but they get awesome Class A EVPs. Seriously, amazing evidence. So there's 3 channels for y'all to check out when you're done with my paranormal stuff. Okay, so I'm so excited to talk about this experience because it happened in my home away from home, and I did kind of like a starter video on this topic probably about a month ago where I talked about paranormal hauntings in Savannah, Georgia, because that's where this experience happened. One of my all-time favorite haunts to go to when I'm in Savannah is a restaurant called Moon River Brewing Company. I got this little coaster from there last time I went. Since I already gave y'all a little bit of history about Savannah, I'm just going to skip over that, but I will give you some history on the building Moon River Brewing Company because just in case you haven't already heard, it was built in 1821. It was the first hotel in the city, and they got real creative with the name, and they called it the First City Hotel. That building not only served as the city's first hotel, but it also served as the post office, the bank, and a bar, aka brothel. Like, yeah, that as well. I don't want to get into all that, but if you don't know what a brothel is, Google it. So the building had a pretty violent past with it being like a brothel and a bar. It's like a gambling house. Like, people are getting drunk. In 1832, and now I know that the Biography Channel, I think it came on some years ago, but there's probably not a paranormal show that I haven't seen. And I know the Biography Channel did a whole program just on this one guy who was killed at Moon River Brewing Company, and his name is James Stark, and he was killed there in 1832. He was like talking all this crap about the doctor, and I don't remember the doctor's last name, but the doctor got there and shot him right on the spot. And I'll probably get into this again later, but if you look on the wall, like the mark where he was shot, like there's still a bullet in the wall. I'll get back to that. A couple other interesting details about the basement before I move on to the rest of the investigation are, besides the bullet thing still being in the wall, there was like this traveling, kind of like circus that came through Savannah at one point in time, and so on the beams for support, you can see they had a lion and a lioness chained in the basement, and you can see where the animals, the lion and the lioness, had like paced around so much that the chains like wore into the beams, and they're like carved in on the bottom. Most of the building is exactly the same today as it was in 1832. And I'll get into why later. In 1864, that was the final year that it was used as a hotel, and in 1999, it was opened as Moon River Brewing Co. that we all can know and love now. They had a really horrible yellow fever epidemic in Savannah, and at that time, the building was used as a hospital, and so that's why there's reported to be, and I've had experience with, children in the building, like, who had died in the building as yellow fever victims. And it was also, and I just discovered this the last time that I was there, did not know this before, it was also used as, like, part of the Underground Railroad. Seriously? Just found that out. I'll tell y'all how I found that out. I just said that the building has not been changed or remodeled much since 1832, and that is because every time they try and do construction in this building, something terrible happens or someone dies. And in the 1990s, there was this lady, and I recently found this out about 3 years ago too on one of my journeys there. I'm always learning something new about this building every time I go back. A woman, the foreman's wife, had come to tell him something or bring him lunch. I don't remember exactly how that story goes, but she was pushed down the stairs and it broke her neck and she died. Basically, there's only three like stories that you can really walk around because since there hasn't been any construction since 1832, everything's kind of shabby, everything's kind of falling apart, right? So there's a basement, and then that's where they like brew the beer. They're a brewery now. And then, so the street level is, of course, where the restaurant is, the bar is, everything is really basically there. And then the second story is like the employee lounge, and it's also like the offices for, the manager and stuff. And on that story, there's also like a ton of junk. It's so weird. It's like a total menagerie of like all kinds of collected items that various tenants, various people have kept in there, since 1821. So they used to just let you like wander around amongst those, basically like 3 levels, basement to the second floor, by yourself, and just do whatever you want, see if you could find any ghosts, see if you felt anything, just basically whatever you wanted to do within reason. Well, then, like, some complete jerk a couple years back, like, went down to the basement and helped himself to, like, the tap, like, the beer that was being brewed. And so they had to, like, shut everything down for a while. And now you're not supposed to, technically, you can't, like, mingle about without like your server or a manager or somebody like that. One of the times, this was probably about 3 or 4 years ago, like I said earlier, I can't really remember. But I was going up the staircase from the restaurant to the third level. And this was still when you didn't have to have anybody walk with you, right? And I got the worst feeling of trepidation. I'm not a claustrophobic person either. Like, I love being in enclosed spaces. And I got a sensation like claustrophobia. Like, I was just like, it was like walking up, and the staircase is very narrow up here. And it was like, I felt something really bad, and I felt like it was a woman. And I was like, why? Like, why am I just, like, I just felt bad energy, and I felt like it was a woman, right? And I was like, what's this about? And then the very next year that I had gone back, that's when they enacted the policy that you had to have a server walk with you. And I got this guy, he was really enthusiastic about it, and he's like, oh yeah, this is like where a foreman's wife got pushed down the stairs and it broke her neck. So I'm just gonna jump into like my best experiences now, because there's just like a ton of little things that I could just go on and on about. I just went there in September, so I wanted to spend just a ton of time in Moon River, because that was right after I had downloaded that application on my iPad that I talk about in a couple of my paranormal videos, where it's like a Ovilus. And so I had just gotten that, and so that was the only piece of equipment that I had taken with me, because actually the front end of my trip was like Walt Disney World, so I wasn't going to take like I wasn't going to take like my digital recorders and all kinds of stuff like that, because I was trying to pack kind of light, right? So the only thing I had taken was my iPad, and I was really wanting to test that piece of equipment out anyway, because I was at Ovilus. They had already seen me in there like 3 times, because I literally ate like lunch, dinner, lunch again. Pretty much all the employees, the manager, had seen me, knew that I was in there like investigating. I wasn't gonna like go drink their beer, whatever. It was about 2 hours before closing, and they were like, well, hey, if you just want to walk around with your device. They didn't even know what the hell it was. They're like, if you just want to walk around with that, go ahead, And so I got the most awesome experience. I went down to the basement, and I was down there all by myself, right? And so, like I said earlier, that is where James Stark was killed, and that is also where they've caught this spirit of a child who goes by Toby. And I think as far as I've heard from television shows and whatever, there's some confusion about who the malevolent spirit is supposed to be. But in the basement, there's supposed to be, like, and I really think it's supposed to be James Stark. I've heard it both ways from different managers. Like, some people say that it's Toby, and, like, Toby is the malevolent spirit, and some people are like, oh no, it's James Stark, and he's malevolent, whatever. But literally, this thing is supposed to hate women, right? So, like, there's all these stories of all these women, and, like, bartenders who are women who are down there, and they've just felt stared down. Like, this one lady got choked down there, and, like, there's, like, a picture of, like, a bruise on her neck, and just, like, all this stuff, like, left and right? So I went down there just completely by myself with my Ovilus, and I was like, look, like, do whatever you want, touch me, you know, I don't care, like, just show me that you're here, give me a sign. You know, I don't go into a new place and, like, just provoke, but if it's somewhere I've been before, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I also think I was just, like, on some kind of, like, euphoric high from just, like, being down there with this brand new piece of equipment. So I was just saying some really brazen stuff, right? And I was just like, hey, I'm here. I'm a woman. Like, do what you want. Like, I had rattled on for probably about 2 minutes, and I wasn't touching the Ovilus. I had it sitting on one of the tables, but I was the only person down there, right? The first thing that it says on my Ovilus is stay. And I was like, no way, right? So as soon as the tail end of that word was coming off my Ovilus, this lady comes downstairs with this other guy, this customer. Well, I come to find out she's like the big time manager right now. Back then, I mean, hopefully she still is. And she was like, she had heard it, and she's like, oh my God, did Toby just tell you to stay? Because she thinks the malevolent spirit is Toby. And I was like, yeah, seems like it. You know, she was asking me a little bit of my history, and she's like, okay, well, you know, are you really into the paranormal? And so I'd gotten into my whole history, which I'm not going to now tell again, because I've done so many vlogs about it, right? But, you know, I told her that I'm not psychic or anything, but I do get intuitions. I've been on a lot of investigations and yada, yada, yada. And she had quite apparently had an experience with the children, and so she wanted to go upstairs because that's mostly where the reported activity of the children occurs, right? So we head upstairs, and the day prior, I had already heard, like, just weird, like, rattling. Like, there were these metal containers, and they almost looked like old tureens, I think is what they're called. Like, the big coffee dispensers. Has anybody ever seen those? Like, the really big ones. They're usually in hotels and stuff. But the like, steel metal tureens, right? And it had sounded like, you know, because I know old buildings settle and whatever, and it was the sound like somebody was, like, rattling it, like like somebody would, like, shake it, and it would, like, and then it would be nothing, right? We had the lights off, and there was one room in particular I just kept getting feelings from, and I was like, I know that there's something here. And I don't know if I've ever said this before in any of my other paranormal videos, but pretty much anybody that's involved with the paranormal that has any kind of, like, intuitions, I find people usually have, like, one area of expertise. And that's, like, they're really good at seeing and hearing children, or they're really good at seeing and hearing women, or they're really good at seeing and hearing men. And I'm really good at seeing and hearing men. I don't know why that is. But I just always have positive experiences with male ghosts, it seems. So I had this strong feeling. I was like, okay, male soldier here in this room. Just got this in my head. And I don't really know too much of the history about what was up with that building during the Civil War, but I do know that Sherman did come through Savannah, and that there were soldiers stationed there. I knew something was in there, right? And so I literally stuck out my hand as far as I could, because this room is actually probably considered dangerous. There is, like, an overhang on the top. It's so hard to describe this area, right? Because a lot of it is just almost like bare structure. Because, you know, I'm sure it was originally something when it was a hotel in this room, why it looks like this now, but it's not. And so basically what it looks like almost in this room is like a barn loft. If any of y'all have ever seen anything like that, where you could climb up and there would be like some kind of like bunker area. I don't even know what it's for. They have it blocked off because it's just structurally not sound, right? So I was like leaning in as far as I could into this room, like the whole top half of my body, like hanging over from where they had me blocked off. And I was like, I know someone's in there and I want you to give me a sign of your presence. I was like, I have this device. You can talk into it, talk into the light. And I stuck my hand out and I said, I want you to touch my hand. I want you to touch me. I want you to make your presence known. And it was so strange. I got like a warming sensation in my palm. It didn't feel like a hand. You know, it didn't feel like other fingers or something. It just felt like a warming sensation. Like, not a burning, but just, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you've ever put on like Bengay or some kind of like muscle joint cream, that's kind of what it was. But it was literally just for like 10 seconds. It was like warm and then it like dissipated, right? So I was like, oh my God. I was like so excited, right? So then like the other guy that she had brought, he wanted to leave or whatever. And we still had about an hour until restaurant closed. And so she was like, well, will you walk around with me some more? Will you try? And like, and have us experience more things. And I was like, yeah, sure. I really wanted to go back downstairs and see what was going on down there. So I kept talking about downstairs. I was talking about the lions that I just had discussed before, the pillars and stuff. So I got a word on the Ovilus immediately after I stopped talking about the pillars, and it said go. Because I was like, okay, I really want to go to the basement. And so I sat down the Ovilus, and she started just asking me questions about my paranormal experiences and whatever. And she was like, and this is the part where she had asked me, like, oh, are you psychic or anything like that? And I was like, no, I'm not psychic, but I do get intuitions and stuff like that. And so I think she wanted to test me out, right? And so this is how I found out about the Underground Railroad thing. She, like, opened this door, and it was like, I don't know, it was like a really creepy looking door downstairs in the basement. And so I walk into this room, and all she tells me is, stop where you feel like it is. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, stop where you feel. And like, sure enough, I was like walking in, and I stopped in this location, and I turned around and I looked, and I was like, okay, like, this is where it's in my mind to stop, right? And she's like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You found it. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even know. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what I'd found, right? And she was just like, you found it. I can't believe you found it. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And she like turned around, and there was like all this junk laying over it, but you could see that there had been like this tunnel and like this, and they had cemented it in, but she's like, that's where this area was used as part of the Underground Railroad. And I was like, no freaking way. They kind of have it all blocked off now because that's like the storage, so it's got like 1 million bottles of ketchup and like all this other stuff that they would need, you know, to be a restaurant. Then like after I had that experience, I don't know, she was like really impressed with my like pseudo psychic skills. And she was like, well, hey, like, you know, I'm like the big manager. There's one other manager that I'd have to get permission with, but she's like, would you be willing to stay in here past closing? And, you know, they'd like lock the doors. And then like she asked me if I would stay after closing and take her around, you know, and then like I felt like that would be a really awesome opportunity because then like we wouldn't have customers. Like it's pretty, like the flooring and the ceiling and stuff is pretty, especially when you're in the basement, it's pretty soundproof, but still like it's even like more of a way to debunk stuff and be like, okay, are people just making noise or whatever? It was just me and this girl, and there was one other guy who was like, I don't know, the night manager or second manager or something, who was in charge of like the counting the money and closing everything down, right? So it was just the three of us there in this whole building, right? I had said before that when we left and the Ovilus said go after I was talking about downstairs. So I said, okay, we're downstairs. Like, tell me something. So then it said play, right? And so Toby is supposed to be a kid. And so I was like, okay, you want to play? I was like, do something. I was like, can you move something? You know, and so I set out like 4 lightweight objects, a shot glass, a straw, a napkin, and like a pin. And I was like, okay, like, I'm going to leave these objects here. Like, I want you to have moved one of them. And what I did is I had lined up like a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, like where I had like lined up all of the objects. And then I was like, okay, we're going to go. Cause like, I don't like if I set a trap out like that, like I don't like to, I don't like to sit there and watch it because I feel like it's like watching water boil, you know? And I also feel like, I don't know. I feel like if you watch it, like things can play tricks on you, know? I knew that nobody was going to tamper with our little experiment because the guy who was there besides the two of us was working upstairs, and I don't think he really like cares, you know? We go back upstairs because she really super wanted me to get in touch with these children, and I told her, I was like, I don't mean to like burst your bubble, but I really don't have any luck contacting. I guess it's because I have no way with children, like living children. So like dead children don't want to have anything to do with me either. I'm pretty creepy, right? She also wanted me to try and contact this woman, and I'm like, okay, like the last experience that I had had with a female spirit was really bad, and you can hear all about that in my scariest and worst paranormal experience ever. I'll just go ahead and link that here. Once again, I was kind of really in a brazen mood, right? And there is also supposed to have been a woman who had stayed at the hotel, and she, you know, you hear this same story like 1,000 times. It's like the worst story ever, right? This woman was supposed to have been there, and she had gotten married to this guy, and quite apparently one day, I don't know what excuse he made, he was like, hey, I'm gonna like go get something, and like abandoned her, like left her there because it turned out he had like another family somewhere else, like a wife and kids and whatever. She was just like beside herself, you know, he didn't come back, so she was staying at the hotel for a while. She just kept like being convinced he was gonna come back, he was gonna come back, he was gonna come back. He never came back. And so like after like a very short period of time, she like hung herself. So like once again, they have the upper levels blocked off pretty well because like there's gaps in the staircase. The staircases are just not reliable for stairs, right? So I climbed up as far as I could, and I was like banging on the wall, and I was like, look, if you don't want me here, like do something. If you don't give me a sign, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to ask you questions. Like, do you like us here? Do you not like us here? And literally, I was just like, pow, 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 like banging on the wall, like making all kinds of ruckus, right? Literally, like, and I've only had one other experience with orbs, and that actually happened after this experience. But it was so crazy. Like, after I had stopped banging on the wall, this, like, bright ball of light, remember I said we turned out all the lights, and this was not facing the windows, right? So this was like basically into complete dark. Did I just say windows? This was not facing the windows. And so this was like complete darkness, and the only light source was coming from behind us. And once again, this is like on the second level. So there were cars like very rarely going back past, because at this point it was after 2 a.m., which is like last call, right? There was this ball of light, and it literally shot like from up the staircase. Like I was somewhat on the staircase. The manager lady was over here, and this ball of light literally shot from like somewhere up from the side of the staircase, like towards where I was banging on the wall, way like past both of our faces, like in front of her face. And she's like, "Did you just see that?" And I was like, "How could I not?" Like it was like a glowing candle, like right darted in front of our faces. I really wanted to go back to that room where I said I felt like that thing was like warming my hand, right? And so I went back over into the room, and I swear it was like, because like I said, everything like isn't really like structurally recognizable in like what shapes this room might have at one point had, right? There was like this spot in the corner where it was almost like, you know, somebody could be like inset. Let me illustrate this. Okay, so with my Picasso hands, I rendered this, like, beautiful drawing for y'all to, like, understand this, because this is just sounding so stupid coming out of my mouth, right? Okay, so this little X represents where I was standing, right? And if you look into the room like this, you know, so, this is how it looks, right? And I don't know structurally what this may have been, like a divider between, like, where people would get dressed and then where people would sleep or something. I don't know what it is, but this is what it looks like right now, right? Here is, like, a barrier of stuff. Like, they literally have boards and stuff to keep people from getting into this room. And then in this room, like, they have, like, seriously, all kinds of weird stuff, like headboards, you know, just various metal junk, like ladders, like all kinds of wood planks from where they had tried to do construction before, just everything imaginable. Okay, so that's like filling up like this space. It's really dark over here, but it was like I could see something like just moving right here, and it was like moving ever so slightly. What it looked like was almost somebody was like crouching and then like kind of standing up a little bit, but it was almost kind of like a floating. And I was like, I really want to get it to like come out of that little area, right? And so I was like, I think I see you, but I can't see you. I'm like, I really want to see you. So I was like, if you could come out and once again make yourself known. I was like, I think that was you that I felt earlier. You know, I really wanted this thing to come out. And so literally what it was, after a while, I literally probably stood there for like 30 minutes or so, and finally it was like, you know, just standing there in pitch darkness, right? And so it was like this man, okay, literally came from that area, this little area where I had seen like the bobbing and weaving going on, literally came and like walked towards this wall. And all it was, I could not see like legs really. I couldn't see anything below like the top of like before the knees, right? But it was like I had seen, it looked like he was wearing saggy clothing and one of the caps, you know, that like Confederate soldiers would wear, like where it has that kind of like slanted like stovetop look. I think they might be called stovetop caps. I don't know. I should know because I design clothes, right? But it was like that, and he like glided past. It looked like he was taking steps, right? But I couldn't see his feet, therefore I wouldn't know. But it was like that kind of like metered walk, and it was just like dunk 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 dunk. Like he took like 15 steps and then disappeared. Yeah. It was like he disappeared into blackness because it was like really really dark over on the other side of the wall. Because this is like no man's land for getting any light at that point. After we saw like the full-bodied apparition, we pretty much like wrapped up upstairs, you know, and so then we went back down to the basement to see if any of the objects had been moved, right? And remember I set the paper there as a guide, and it looked like the straw, because I set the straw like vertically along the piece of paper, and it looked like the straw had like moved a little bit. And I mean, there's really no other explanation. I'm speaking pig Latin now. There's really no other explanation for that. Because like I said, nobody was going to go down there and mess with our little experiment. And there's no way that, there's no doors down there that anybody was going in. There's the one big door that I said went to the storage before, but other than that, it's just basically like there's the structural pillars, but that's just how you go from one part of the basement to the other. There's not like doors that somebody could have opened and it would have been like a gust that would have moved a straw. And you know, it's the basement, there's not any air flowing around. So that was pretty cool to see that. That was like one of the greatest experiences ever. I loved seeing like a full-bodied apparition like that clear, and just combined with the other experiences of, you know, feeling the warming sensation in my hand and just everything else with the night was just totally awesome with the orb, and it was probably the most successful investigation that I have ever had. I'm just telling y'all like the big stuff. Like we heard consistently throughout the night like more of like the footstep type sounds and like the rattling of the coffee pot things, like the rattling of the metal and stuff. And as usual, please take a moment to subscribe. I will definitely be doing more paranormal vlogs in the near future. And also, please leave me your comments below. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know if any of y'all have been to Moon River in Savannah and if y'all have had any paranormal experiences. Please don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter. I am pretty vacant. So I hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later. Bye.